Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today our commander is Lonis, Cryptozoologist. Thanks to InKing727 for requesting this commander. Until recent years, Lonis' career had garnered him little personal or professional respect, for the idea of cryptids on Ravnica was somehow unbelievable to his colleagues. In the Simic Combine, I guess the idea that bizarre monsters might exist naturally in the wild had them questioning why they spent all their time making mutants of their own. In any case, the upheaval during the recent Phyrexian invasion caused massive sections of Ravnica's Undercity to thrust themselves above the surface of her streets. The plants and animals of this risen Undercity were exposed to sunlight for the first time, causing transformations and mutations and sparking a renewed interest in Lonis' quest to discover Ravnica's unknown creatures. We love a weird dude who likes weird things. I'm excited to share you what I put together for Lonis, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I built a deck for it. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play the game. So let's talk about our commander. Lonis Cryptozoologist is a 1/2 legendary Snake Elf Scout for Simic mana, a green and a blue. It says whenever another non-token creature we control enters, we investigate, which means we make a clue token. Clue tokens are a predefined artifact token that says pay 2 generic mana and sacrifice this token to draw a card. But Lonis also lets us tap him and sacrifice X clues to have target opponent reveal the top X cards of their library. We get to put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among those cards revealed onto the battlefield under our control, and then that opponent puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. Lonis is cool. I've wanted to build a deck around this card for a long time because there are so many ways you can build him. He has a Creaturefall trigger, that is, an ability that triggers when creatures enter the battlefield, which also triggers artifact fall abilities by making clues. Clues are already an excellent mana sink that give us a way to smooth awkward hands and dig for answers, and Lonis essentially gives all our non-token creatures a kicker cost of pay 2 to draw a card, even if we want to do it on a later turn. There's just so much his first ability does for us that I almost don't even think about his second one. But that other ability is rad. The more creatures we bring into play, the more Lonis' research puts him on the trail of something unexpected and fascinating. His ability is easy to activate, requiring no cost besides a tap and a sacrifice of all these free clues he's given us. And then we get to dig as deep as our investigation has taken us into an opponent's deck, then find their coolest permanent and surprise everyone by plopping it onto our playmat. And if it's a creature, it triggers Lonis' first ability to give us one more clue. The truth is out there, and the search never ends. So our deck indulges in all these pieces of Lonis' design. We're running plenty of creatures to trigger his first ability, but we also take a page out of our Simic Scout's book and get creative with our inquests. Lonis doesn't require our non-token creatures to have been cast, only to enter under our control. So we have a collection of ways to blink our creatures or bounce them to our hand to be recast, both of which rebuy our Creaturefall triggers, Lonis' or otherwise. Speaking of which, many of our creatures have enters triggers of their own, either giving us value when they come into play, or following Lonis' lead and triggering when other creatures hit the board. We even have a fun sub-theme of manifesting cards, upping our creature count even more and getting value out of our face-down mysteries. But that isn't all. Zoologists know that the evolution of an animal, even an inscrutable one, is a product of their environment, so we can't neglect the ecosystem of our own game plan. We have payoffs for all our non-token creatures and non-creature tokens, landing and leaving and landing again, drawing us cards or giving our gang evasion, or even bringing some token creatures along for the ride. However, our payoffs pale in comparison to all the synergy pieces we have. Cards that give us alternative ways to use our clues, cards that care about how many clues or tokens or artifacts we have in play, and even cards that manipulate the ways our abilities function in the first place. And on top of all that, we have a few cards that supplement Lonis' research by stealing opponents' creatures in a more permanent way, and an alternate victory condition to prove that pursuing your passion pays off. It feels like our deck is built around simply our commander's first ability, but that's by design. We have a functional strategy that just doesn't rely on Lonis stealing our opponent's stuff, which means every time he does, it catches everyone off guard. He can find us a surprise blocker at instant speed, mess with our opponent's plans if they scry or surveil or otherwise stack the top of their library, and especially get us value from all our friends who care about creatures entering. And sure, he can claim another kind of permanent, nabbing a mana rock or an enchantment or a sweet planeswalker if he finds one, but Lonis loves studying creatures, so we want to take the biggest, best, or just most bewildering ones we can find. And the pattern fits. We call on our opponents, show them our evidence, and invite them in for an interview. They aren't suspects, of course, at least not at this juncture. We're just curious as to what they can tell us, and if, when we bring them in, they happen to have something relevant to our case on their person, it's only natural that we'd need to confiscate it from them, at least for the time being. After all, despite the inconvenience, any law-abiding citizen would agree to a little temporary asset forfeiture pursuant to ongoing investigation. You'll enjoy this deck if you like seeing your cards snowball into more and more value with each creature you play, or if you like the feeling of always having something to do on your turns as you connect the dots and chase down leads and figure out just what Lonis has been looking for, one way or another. So, as usual, this Mox Field list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section, filled to the brim with cards that I considered putting in this deck, but which ultimately didn't make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done here and you want to emphasize it a little harder, or if you want to take one of the things I've done and go into it in more depth than I have, that considering section is a great place for you to begin when you build your own Lonis Cryptozoologist deck. So we're going to begin with a bit of a small section. It's our Creaturefall section. These are cards that, like Lonis, will trigger when we have other creatures enter the battlefield. We're going to start with Gala-Greeters. This is 1 green for a 1/1 Elf Druid from Streets of New Capenna, one of my favorite sets, that has an Alliance ability. Alliance just means Creaturefall. Whenever another creature we control enters, choose one of these that hasn't been chosen this turn. We either put a 1/1 counter on the Gala-Greeters, we make a tapped treasure token, or we gain 2 life. Typically, the way I play this out is you always make the treasure first, because it's coming in tapped, so you can't use it that turn, and you're only going to get one of those from the Gala-Greeters trigger anyway, so you might as well get a little bit of acceleration while you can, as well as some additional artifact tokens, which is relevant for some of our other cards. After that, I usually put a counter on the Greeters or gain life. Typically, I choose the counter before the life, so if there are turns where you're not getting 3 other creatures to enter, then you're just not going to gain the life. But if you need it, it's there for you. Otherwise, you get your Gala-Greeters a little bit bigger after you've ramped a little bit. Next is Champion of Lambholt. This is 1 and double green for a 1/1 human warrior that says creatures with power less than this creature's power can't block creatures you control. To say that again, any of our opponent's creatures that don't have power at least as high as the Champion of Lambholt's can't block any of our creatures. Meaning if the Champion of Lambholt's power is greater than each creature an opponent controls, that all of our creatures are then unblockable to that opponent. So we want to make the Champion of Lambholt as big as we can so that our whole board is unblockable and we can swing in and do a lethal amount of damage. The way we make it big is with Creaturefall. Whenever another creature we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on the Champion of Lambholt. So it gets bigger and bigger, becoming more of a threat, not just because it has a huge power and toughness, but because it makes more and more of our board unblockable by one opponent or maybe all of them. So yeah, pretty sweet. It's kind of the definition of a bomb, because if our opponents don't deal with it, it's going to kill them. So in that way, it's a little bit of a removal magnet, which makes it removal bait for us. Our commander is 2 mana, so is very easy to recast if it's removed. But it's also not that offensive until we start using his second ability. I mean, Lonis is just a 2 mana 1/2 that sits there and makes treasure or makes clues for us. So why would our opponents spend their removal on that, even though he's empowering our whole deck? So the Champion of Lambholt being a little bit of removal bait is pretty good for us for keeping our commander in play. So it's great for us if it stays, and it's fine if it leaves. Love it. Next, we have Clement the Worrywart. This is from Bloomborough, and because we care about self-bounce, and that was the theme for the Frogs of Bloomborough, we have a little bit of a frog sub-theme in this deck. If you like frogs, welcome, I've got some. So Clement the Worrywart is 1 green and a blue for a 3/3 legendary frog druid with vigilance. And whenever Clement or another creature we control enters, we return up to one target creature we control with lesser mana value to its owner's hand. So this is pretty sweet. It means Clement comes in, and if we have a creature in play with mana value 1 or 2, we can just bounce that right away. If we have a different creature enter, we can bounce something else with lesser mana value, and just keep doing that, making it so the things we're bouncing are things that are easier to replay because they cost less. And we're getting their enters triggers again, or getting any Creaturefall triggers, including Lonis's again, and so forth. It also says, when Clement or another creature we control enters, return up to one target creature. It says up to, so we don't have to return any to our hand, but it also means that if we have a creature enter with mana value 4 or greater, we can bounce Clement to his own ability, which maybe triggers something we care about. Pretty good. In addition, Clement says frogs we control have tap to add a green or a blue, but only to cast creature spells with. That seems pretty good. It also means since Clement is a 3/3 vigilance, if we aren't worried about risking him, we can attack with Clement and then tap him for mana because he is a frog we control. Pretty sweet. Helps with our little frog theme. Next, we have Garruk's Uprising. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment that does 3 things. It gives all of our creatures trample. That's pretty good. A little bit of evasion for our creatures, especially ones that are constantly getting bigger, is pretty helpful. It also says when it enters, if we control a creature power 4 or greater, we draw a card. We've got lots of creatures that are that way, and several creatures that get bigger, like our Gallagreators or our Champion of Lamholt. So Garruk's Uprising can replace itself, and often does when we get it into play. But what if we have creatures that are ferocious, that have power 4 or greater, that is? Before Garruk's Uprising comes in, well, we'll draw a card. What if we have them come in after Garruk's Uprising is in play? Well, whenever a creature we control with power 4 or greater enters, we draw a card. So this is another Creaturefall trigger. It only works on ferocious creatures, creatures with power 4 or greater. But it gives us one of the best possible rewards for Creaturefall, which is card draw. So 2 different ways of getting card advantage and giving all of our creatures an evasive ability, a strong one. Yeah, sounds great. Last in this section is Silverback Elder. A little expensive for one of the cards in this deck, but I truly love this card. I played it during Standard when DMU was in Standard, DMU being Dominaria United. Just really like this card. And great art, too. Just big ape. So Silverback Elder is 2 and triple green, so not that easy to cast, but not too hard in this deck, for a 5/7 Ape Shaman that says whenever we cast a creature spell, choose one. Now, I want to be clear. This is not Creaturefall. This is a cast trigger. I've just put it in this section because it functions similarly, but it does mean that we don't get this trigger if we bounce a creature, or if we steal a creature from an opponent using Lonis, or if we just find a way to put a creature into play. We do get this trigger if we cast a creature spell normally, or if we bounce a creature, like say with Clement, and recast it, since this is a cast trigger. Just want to be clear, not technically a Creaturefall trigger, but functionally similar, so I put it in this section for that reason. But what do we get when we cast a creature spell while the Silverback Elder is in play? We can either naturalize something, destroying an artifact or an enchantment. We can look at the top 5 of our library and put a land card from among them on the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom in a random order. So this is a little bit of ramp for us. It can whiff, but often it does not. Or we can gain 4 life. Just like the Gallagreators, we've got a good additional option. But Silverback Elder does not require us to choose different ones every time it triggers in the same turn. We can, if we get 3 creature spells on the stack during that turn, we can naturalize 3 things if we want. Or we can dig 15 deep, 5 at a time, to get, hopefully, 3 different lands into play tapped. Yeah, Silverback Elder does a lot of work for us. So that is our Creaturefall section. Let's talk now about the rebuying section that we were talking about earlier. These are cards that give us ways to bounce our creatures or otherwise get their cast and Creaturefall triggers, or the cast or Creaturefall triggers of our other cards a second time. Starting with Dour Portmage. This is another Bloomborough Frog. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 Frog Wizard that says whenever one or more creatures we control leave the battlefield without dying, we draw a card. So that means if we bounce them, if we flicker them, if we exile them for another reason, other than flickering them, we've lots of different ways to draw cards. It does not even say other creatures. Oh, I'm sorry, it does say other creatures. Silly me. Yeah, the Dowerport Mage doesn't count itself, but it sure does count all of our other creatures. If we do them all at once, it's one or more, so we only get to draw one card, but if we bounce them or flicker them or something serially, we'll draw a card for each one. We can also use the Mage to do that very thing, paying 1 a blue and tap to bounce a creature we control to its owner's hand. That'll draw us a card, so pretty good. Next is Run Away Together. Classic card from Throne of Eldraine. They've reprinted it a couple of times, including in Bloomburrow. I guess I could have used the Bloomburrow art for this, which may have a frog on it? I'm not sure. Anyway, this is 1 and a blue for an instant that says choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players, return those creatures to their owner's hands. So we can use this in 2 ways. We can either target one of our own creatures and target an opponent's creature and bounce them both. So we've got a little bit of tempo style removal for our opponent's creature and a way to put one of our creatures back in our hand. Or we can have it target just 2 creatures by opponents. As long as it's 2 different players, we could bounce them both for just 2 mana of our own. This isn't helping us rebuy things, but it's another option for us to use it as a removal spell. Not bad. We've seen Clement. Clement lets us bounce things when we have creatures enter if the thing we're bouncing has lesser mana value than the creature that entered. Unnerving Grasp is next. This is 2 and a blue for a sorcery that says return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So that is just a solid bounce spell. We can bounce one of our own creatures, it can be one of our opponent's creatures, or it could be something of ours or our opponent's that's not a creature at all. As long as it's not a land, it can be any permanent. We bounce it. In addition, we manifest Dread. This is a cool mechanic that I went a little hard on in this deck because it works well for us. So what it means is we look at the top 2 cards of our library, we put 1 into our graveyard, and the other goes onto the battlefield face down and is a 2/2 creature. That 2/2 creature, we can turn it face up anytime we want for its mana cost if it's a creature card. So if you look at the top 2 cards and you see 2 lands, one's going to go in your library, or rather into your graveyard, and one's going to go into play face down as a 2/2 creature. But notably, that is a card, that is not a token. So this is now a 2/2 creature that has entered the battlefield and is not a token. So a non-token creature entered, so our Creaturefall triggers, particularly the Lonis' one, will trigger off of a land we had. Now, we're not going to get to play that land ourselves later, with a little asterisk there. You'll see more for our other Manifest Dread cards. But it does give us a little card selection. It puts something in our graveyard that we might be able to recur later. It gives us the ability to have more creatures in our deck, quote unquote, or have more creatures enter, I should say, than we have in our deck. Because if we see those 2 lands, well, those aren't normally going to trigger Lonis, but manifesting Dread and putting 1 into play as a face-down 2/2 will trigger Lonis. However, if we were to see a land and Gallic Readers, let's say, we could put the land in our graveyard and put Gallic Readers face down onto the battlefield as a 2/2, and then at any time we can pay that 1 and a green casting cost and flip it over. That doesn't even use the stack. We just have to have priority when we do it. That is not it entering. It already entered. So we're not going to get a Creaturefall trigger there as well, like an additional one. But we do have access to the abilities of that creature, so that's pretty good too. Next up is Michelangelo Improviser from the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. This is 3 and a green for a 4/4 legendary Mutant Ninja Turtle. I guess there's no type for teenage. With whenever Michelangelo deals combat damage to a player, we can put a creature card and or a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So this gives us the ability to sneak out a creature and sneak out a land. An extra little bit of ramp if we've got extra lands in our hand. A way to get a creature into play without us having to cast it, which means we wouldn't get our Silverback Elder cast trigger, but we would get our Creaturefall triggers like Lonis's. So, and the ability to do a creature card and a land both when Michelangelo deals combat damage, that's pretty great. And he's a 4/4 creature, so not that hard to do combat damage, especially because he has the Sneak ability. Sneak is an alternate casting cost. Rather than paying 3 and a green, we can pay 2 and double green, so almost the same, to cast him snuck, I guess is the way you want to think of it. We can cast it for that cost if we also return an unblocked attacker we control to our hand during the declare blocker step. And then Michelangelo will enter tapped and attacking. So this is a little bit like ninjutsu. It's not quite the same thing. We can only do it during the declare blocker step. So after blockers have been declared, if we have a creature that's attacking and is not being blocked, we can cast Michelangelo for 2 and double green. This is a alternate casting cost as opposed to ninjutsu, which is an activated ability. But it does put him into play tapped and attacking. He's not going to be blocked because we've already passed the declare blocker step, and he'll do that combat damage to a player, and we'll get to put a creature and or land from our hand onto the battlefield. All very nice. But the reason he's in this section is because if we attack with a creature and that creature isn't blocked, we can sneak Michelangelo in, getting a Creaturefall trigger for Michelangelo, but also rebuying that creature for ourselves, or rather bouncing it to our hand so that we can rebuy it and recast it whenever we want to. It could be that that's the creature we put into play with Michelangelo's sabotage trigger. So yeah, pretty good. Next up is another sneak card from the TMNT set. This is 3 and a green for a sorcery. It's New Generation's Technique, and it's Explosive Vegetation. 3 and a green for a sorcery, search your library for up to 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So double Rampant Growth, which is Explosive Vegetation. I love Explosive Vegetation cards, so I wanted to put it in here because we can sneak it for 2 and a green. So for Cultivate mana, we get Explosive Veggies. That's pretty great. And by doing so, we are bouncing one of our creatures, an unblocked attacker during the declare blocker step. We're not getting any damage because we're bouncing our attacker and not replacing it with a creature, but we are getting 2 lands into play. So hopefully we can replay that creature right away with our other untapped mana, and if we can't, no big deal, we just added 2 lands to our lands in play so that we can recast that creature again next time. Neat. Starfield Vocalist is next. This is 3 and a blue for a 3/4 human bard that says if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. This is basically Panharmonicon. It doubles our triggers for all of our enters effects. So we have a Starfield Vocalist enter, Lonis will see Starfield Vocalist and make 2 clues. It's not doubling our number of tokens, it's going to have Lonis' trigger go on the stack twice, and each one of those will make a clues. But we're going to end up with 2 clues. Just like if Galagreeters was in play, we play the Vocalist, Galagreeters' ability will trigger twice, and we can choose maybe to make a treasure and then to gain some life. It's 2 different triggers, so we can only choose each of those options once, but Starfield Vocalist gives us both of those triggers, so that's pretty nice. Yeah. In addition, Starfield Vocalist has Warp for 1 and a blue, meaning we can cast this for its warp cost rather than for 3 and a blue. And if we do, we exile it at the beginning of the next end step, and then we can cast it from exile on a later turn for its regular casting cost. So the idea with this is, the reason it's in our Rebuys section is because we can warp it in. We pay 1 and a blue, it enters, we get whatever enters triggers there would be from it entering or the rest of that turn. Then at the end step, it goes away, and we can cast it again on a later turn for 3 and a blue and get enters triggers again. So double enters triggers built into Starfield Vocalist if we want to warp it in. Pretty good. Next is Temur Sabertooth. This is 2 and double green for a 4/3 cat with pay 1 and a green. We may return another creature we control to its owner's hand, and if we do, Temur Sabertooth gains indestructible until end of turn. Nice. A way to protect our Sabertooth, which has good stats, so it's good for attacking and good for blocking. We can do this at instant speed, obviously. It doesn't require it to tap, so we can block with it, we can attack with it, whatever we want to do. Maybe get some good trades, and especially put one of our creatures back in our hand to rebuy it again. Pretty good. Next is another Warp card. This is Anti-Causal Vestige. 6 generic mana for a 7/5 Eldrazi that says when it leaves the battlefield, so it doesn't have an enters trigger, it has a leaves the battlefield trigger. We draw a card, and then we can put a permanent card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands we control from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. So oftentimes, this might be a land itself. Lands have a mana value of 0, so it doesn't matter how many lands we have. Anti-Causal Vestige can let us draw a card, and if we have a land in hand and we want to just put it into play, We sure can, and it doesn't even come in tapped. But also, if we've got creatures, if we've got, one of our enchantments that are in this deck, some artifacts, whatever permanent we have, as long as we have enough lands in play that we could have been able to cast it, we can just put it directly in play. As usual, that's going to trigger Creaturefall triggers, if it's a creature, but it won't trigger things like that. Even though I've tagged it as a Creaturefall card, it won't trigger our Silverback Elder's cast trigger. But it does let us sneak some things in. That seems good. And just like with our Starfield Vocalist, Anti-Causal Vestige has a warp, has the ability for us to warp it in. For 4 generic mana, we can cast it, it'll come in, at the end step, it'll exile itself, and we can get it later, again, for 6. But because it exiles itself at the end step, it will trigger its own leaves the battlefield ability. Pretty good. So we get to do this, then replay it again, get our Creaturefall triggers, and it'll stick around until it leaves some other way. Pretty good. I do want to mention, since we're seeing both of our warp creatures right now, what we can do with our bounce spells. No, I'm sorry, not our bounce. Oh, well, we can do it with our bounce spells. So if you were to warp in Anti-Causal Vestige and then use Dour Portmage to bounce it, it will leave the battlefield. We'll get its leave the battlefield trigger. We'll draw a card from Dour Portmage. And then we can warp it in again that same turn if we want to. Pay another additional 4. That's a total of 10 mana, but we're getting 2 free spells from it and all these different Creaturefall triggers. Or we could warp it in, bounce it, and then play it for normal. Its delayed trigger that would exile it will not be able to find it again if we play it for its normal casting cost, because the object that it was when we warped it in has already left the battlefield. It already went back to our hand. Since we replayed it, it's a new object, so we're getting to keep it, even though this did cost us quite a bit of mana. Which is why it's even better if you flicker it, if you blink it. Blinking a card, as you maybe know, or maybe you don't, you'll see it in the next section. Blinking a card means to exile that permanent and then return it to the battlefield, either right away or at the next end step, and it comes back in as a new game object. If you were to take a warp creature like Starfield Vocalist, warp it in for 2, and then flicker it or blink it, it will leave the battlefield and then re-enter as a new game object, meaning its delayed trigger that would exile it at the end step can't find the original object that it was when we first warped it in, because it has left the battlefield and re-entered and is now a new game object. So this is how, with Blink and Warp, you can cheat on warp costs. So if you have a way to flicker a creature, you could flicker the Starfield Vocalist after warping it in, and you've sort of cheated on its casting cost. Same is true of Anti-Causal Vestige, but is even better because it has this leaves the battlefield trigger, which will happen when it is flickered, and then it comes back in after we've, if we warp it in, flicker it, it leaves, we get its trigger, it's come back in, and then at the end step, it gets to stick around. Pretty cool. Finally, in this section, we have Hullbreaker Horror, a card that I have a lot of mixed feelings about because I really like playing it and I really hate playing against it. Definitely had this come out in a Commander game against, I think, 5 other opponents, and this card just took over the game. It's crazy. I guess it is a 7 mana creature. For 5 and double blue, we get a 7/8 Kraken Horror with Flash that cannot be countered. So you can flash this in. Get some enters triggers on an opponent's turn. Neat. And whenever we cast a spell, doesn't say by, if you spend mana on it, it doesn't say on your turn. Anytime we cast any spell, we get to choose to either return a spell we don't control to its owner's hand, meaning we get to remand something, just put a spell that's on the stack back in its owner's hand so that if they want to cast it, they have to pay for it again, or we can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So that is us bouncing one of our opponent's things or one of our own things, which is why it's in this Rebuys section. A little bit of repeatable removal every time we cast a spell seems good, or repeatable self-bounce is also very good, whatever we need. That is our Rebuys section. Let's look now at our Blink section. These are the cards that, like I mentioned before, let us exile something and then bring it right back. So Nephalia Smuggler is a weird inclusion in this deck. I went back and forth with this, but I want to just explain it, and then I'll explain why it's in this deck in a moment. This is a single blue for a 1/1 human rogue with an activated ability, pay 3 and a blue, and tap it to exile another target creature we control, and then return that card to the battlefield under our control. So just gives us the ability to immediately flicker something. We blink it whenever we want to. We can activate this on an opponent's turn if we want, assuming this doesn't have summoning sickness. And we get our enters triggers, and we also protect whatever creature we're flickering from some effect that might have hurt it. We can do this by bouncing our creatures as well with the Rebuys section. But for example, if an opponent casts Path to Exile on our commander, we can respond by activating Nephalia Smuggler, flickering our commander, and now the creature that our opponent was targeting with Path to Exile isn't around anymore. We have a different creature, a new game object, so it protects them. That's why this is going to show up in the protection section too. Next we have Waterbender's Restoration. This is from the Avatar: The Last Airbender set. For double blue, we have an instant that is a lesson, not relevant, but it's helping us learn things, that has an additional cost to Waterbend X. Waterbending means we can pay as much X mana as we want, but we can also tap our artifacts and creatures, and each one pays a single generic mana into this. So we get to, let's say, pay double blue and then tap 3 clues, and we've waterbent 3. So that's one of the ways we're using our clues for this and several other waterbend cards in our deck. Being able to sort of improvise, if you want to think of it like that mechanic, our way into additional value. And Waterbender's Restoration says, exile X target creatures we control and return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this, I call this a slow flicker. It is not exiling them and bringing them back right away. It's exiling them and then bringing them back at the next end step. So that might be our end step. If we cast this on our turn, it's an instant. So if we cast it on an opponent's turn, they might be coming back, during our opponent's end step. Either way is fine. What's great about this is we can use this not just to protect our creatures, like I mentioned with the Nephalia Smuggler, by if one of our creatures gets targeted by something, we can protect them from it by flickering it. But we can also do 2 other kinds of protection with this. We can block with our creatures, and as long as the creatures we are blocking don't have trample, we can, before damage is dealt but after blocks are declared, slow flicker our creatures. We can do this with a regular flicker, but especially with the slow flicker, we can just exile those creatures, and the creatures that they blocked are still blocked, so they're not going to do damage to us. And then, at the end step, we get our creatures back. But even better is being able to protect our creatures from a board wipe. Because if we do a normal flicker of our creatures with, a Day of Judgment on the stack, our creature's going to leave the battlefield and come right back, and then Day of Judgment will resolve and it dies. But with Waterbender's Restoration, a slow flicker lets us exile our creatures, and we have a delayed trigger that's going to bring them back. So that's not happening yet. So Day of Judgment resolves, kills everything on the battlefield, and then at the end step, our creatures come back because they've been in exile. Sweet. So I'm going to use Waterbender's Restoration, one last thing about this, to explain why Nephalia Smuggler's in this deck. Half of our Blink cards are worded like Waterbender's Restoration in the sense that they say, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. Whereas Nephalia Smuggler says, exile that creature, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. These are distinct for this reason. If we don't own a card, if we've stolen a creature from our opponent using probably Lonis, then using Waterbender's Restoration to flicker that creature is going to send it to exile and then bring it back to the battlefield under its owner's control. They're going to get it back, and they didn't even have to cast it because we stole it from them. So we want to try and not flicker creatures that we control but don't own with effects like Waterbender's Restoration, because those creatures' owners are just going to get them back. However, we can certainly flicker creatures we control but don't own with Nephalia Smuggler, because it comes back under our control. So we get to keep it. We want to be able to use our flicker effects, of which there are, to be fair, only 8, But we have other ways to do things similar to this, and we have repeatable ways to do it, as you'll see in a moment. We want to be able to use these flicker effects on our creatures to get more Creaturefall triggers, especially Lonis's, but we don't want to lose the things we've stolen using Lonis in the first place. So Nephalia Smuggler, that's why it's here. It's a repeatable, albeit a little expensive, way to flicker things without losing them if we don't own them. Waterbender's Restoration could hit a lot more things and protects them better because it's a slow flicker, and ultimately costs less because it gives us a way to use our clues and other artifacts and even creatures to flicker them. But it does mean that if we flicker something that we don't own, we're not going to get to keep it. I do want to make mention one last thing. Waterbend is great for us to be able to tap our artifact tokens like our clues for it, since clue tokens do not require a tap in order to be sacrificed. We just pay 2 and sack it, and you get to draw a card, so even if it's tapped, that works the same way. But it's also true that with Waterbender's Restoration, if our creatures we want to flicker are untapped, we can just tap them to pay for the Waterbend cost in order to flicker them. Each one will sort of pay for itself beyond that 2 blue mana. But if our creatures are tapped, if we're doing this to, let's say, make a big attack and our opponent makes some blocks that we didn't expect them to make, or they make some blocks and then they pump up their creatures, maybe our creatures are tapped so we can't tap them to waterbend them away and protect them from the attack that has turned out not as good as we wanted it to be. So in that case, we just use our clues to get those creatures waterbent away. Anyway, you understand the difference between returning things under your control or the owner's control. You understand the difference between a regular flicker and a slow flicker. We've learned everything we need to learn. Let's talk about these other cards. So Ghostly Flicker is 2 and a blue for an instant that says exile 2 artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. This is another under your control card, so pretty helpful for us. It also means we can flicker artifacts. So if we steal an artifact from an opponent that has a cool enters trigger, or some reason we might want to use it, like, I don't know, maybe it's a giant mana rock that makes like 5 mana for us. What's that thing called? It's the Chromatic Orrery, 7 mana card that taps for 5, lets you spend all your mana as though it was any color, and then you can pay like 5 mana and draw a bunch of cards. That seems cool. Let's tap that for 5 mana, spend 3 of it to cast Ghostly Flicker, and then flicker it so it comes back and it's untapped. We can tap it for more mana. It's just a one-off option, but it's there. Oftentimes we're going to be doing creatures with this, but it's also possible if we have a cool land that we want to untap, and we've already got the mana to do this, and we might as well untap it, then we can flicker a land, it'll come back untapped. That seems good. Yeah. Long River Lurker is next. This is one of our other frogs, obviously. Don't know that I had to tell you that. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 frog scout. Scout, just like Lonis, helpful. With ward for a single generic mana, so a little bit of protection. But also all of our other frogs have ward 1, so that seems good too. And when this creature enters, target creature we control can't be blocked this turn. So Long River Lurker has a great enters trigger. It makes one of our creatures unblockable. And whenever that creature deals combat damage this turn, we may exile it, and if we do, we return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So we have to do combat damage with it. We can't just attack. We have to get all the way through to combat damage. Now, it can't be blocked, but if it gets removed for some reason because our opponent doesn't want to take that damage, that's unfortunate. But we do get the ability to make a creature unblockable, attack with it, and if we do combat damage, whether it's to an opponent or whatever else we're attacking, like maybe a battle, I don't know why we would attack a battle, but I guess we could, or like a planeswalker, then we get to flicker that creature, getting its enters triggers or Creaturefall triggers, all of our triggers off again, but also untapping that creature because it doesn't say it comes back in tapped. So it's like we're giving unblockable and vigilance to that creature, in addition to getting a bunch of extra triggers. Pretty cool. Next, we have yet another frog. This is 2, a green and a blue, for a 4/4 frog druid called Lily Splash Mentor. It has reach, so 4 mana 4/4 for reach, that's already solid. And we can pay 1, a green and a blue, and we don't have to tap, to exile another target creature we control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, with a 1/1 counter on it. But we can only do this at sorcery speed. So it's not the most protective flicker that we have, but it does give us the ability to have a little bit of a mana sink, double up on our interest triggers, and put a little bit more power and toughness onto our creature by putting that counter on it. Seems good. And again, ferocious. Next, we are running Conjurer's Closet. 5 generic mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So this is a free regular flicker at our end step. We don't get to choose when it happens, but we do get it every turn. So that's more Lonis triggers every turn. Any of our other Creaturefall or interest triggers seems good. Next we have Deadeye Navigator. This is a really cool card. 4 and double blue for a 5/5 spirit with Soul Bond. Soul Bond means we may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters. They remain paired for as long as we control both of them. So the idea is, let's say we have Lonis, for example, and we cast Deadeye Navigator, it enters, this enters, and we choose to pair it with Lonis. Now it is paired with Lonis. Or if we don't do that, and another creature enters later, like maybe Lily Splash Mentor, it has entered, Deadeye Navigator is not paired, so we can choose to pair it with the Mentor. Yeah, now they are paired. But what does it mean to be paired? Well, it means as long as Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, each of those creatures, meaning the creature it's paired with and the Navigator itself, have the ability, pay 1 and a blue, exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. So we can flicker at instant speed whatever creature is paired with the Navigator or the Navigator itself. This is a really cool Soul Bond creature because it can reset its own bond by flickering itself. We just flicker this, and now we don't control both creatures, so whatever it was bonded with, or whatever it was paired with, rather, is no longer paired. Deadeye Navigator enters, triggers itself, and we can pair it with something else. Pretty cool. We can even chain our way into different flickers if we want. Like, let's say this is paired with the Lily Splash Mentor. We activate the ability for the Mentor, it leaves, re-enters, Deadeye Navigator sees it enter, and we repair it, and we get whatever benefit we get from flickering that Mentor. Then we activate this again, same turn, on the Navigator itself, unpairing it and having it re-enter, getting whatever triggers we get from that, and we pair it with Lonis, let's say. And then we activate this ability on Lonis and flicker Lonis as well. So lots of different ways of getting cool benefits from this, in addition to all the other flicker fun that we talked about before, like protecting a creature from a removal spell, that sort of thing. So sinking a lot of mana into this to flicker things seems good. The only thing we couldn't do with it is like pair it with a Lily Splash Mentor, flicker the Mentor, and then want to pair it with something that's already in play, but we can't because neither of it nor the Navigator are entering in this moment, so we have to flicker the Navigator to do that, but it still gets us value. So lots of fun flickering here. Finally, we have Y'shtola Rule. If I have mispronounced that, forgive me, I'm not a Final Fantasy guy, but let me know in the comments if I got it right. I appreciate it. So this is 4 and double blue for a 3/5 legendary cat druid that says at the beginning of your end step, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Then, if it's the first end step of the turn, there is an additional end step after this step. So this seems like what it does is it gives you a flicker and then an extra end step. What it actually gives you is 2 flickers, because as well as 2 end steps, which means this will trigger at the beginning of our end step. That's the only condition for it to trigger. So we go to our end step, we have this ability trigger, and we get to flicker something. And then it checks, was this the first end step? If it was, we get an extra end step. Then we pass to that end step, and this will trigger, it's the end step again, so we'll get to flicker something a second time, and it will check, was this the first end step? Oh, it wasn't? Then this doesn't happen. So we get 2 flickers from Y'shtola, and that seems pretty great. 2 flickers on a 3/5 body for 6 at the every end step. That's really strong, in addition to the fact that it doubles up on all of our end step triggers because it gives us 2 end steps. So if we have Y'shtola and Conjurer's Closet in play, we will get to have this trigger at our end step and our second end step as well. Pretty cool. So that is our blink section. Next, we have a small section of theft. I wanted to go over this right here because this covers 4 cards we just saw. These are the 4 blink cards that all say return that creature to the battlefield under your control. Under your control. Your control. Ugh. Your control. And you can check, and it does say that in the Oracle text. So, worth noting that these are the only ones that can let us flicker our stolen creatures and keep them, or I guess creatures, artifacts, and lands. That covers our theft section. Let's go now to our Manifest Dread section. We've already talked about Manifest Dread, but just to refresh you, the way this mechanic works is you look at the top 2 cards of your library, one goes in your graveyard, the other goes face down into play as a 2/2 creature. And if that card is a creature card, you can flip it over by paying its mana cost at any time you want, as long as you have priority, but without using the stack. So this is beneficial because if you put a creature card out, you're getting an enters trigger before you even quote-unquote cast it. You still have to pay that cost to get the creature in itself, and you won't get an enters trigger when you flip it over, but you would have had to pay that cost anyway to get that creature in, so might as well have a trigger early. And you can do this like in a sneaky way, like, you know, maybe it's your Hullbreaker Horror and you attack with a 2/2 and your opponent blocks and they're like, haha, I'm gonna kill your 2/2, and you flip it over and it's a Hullbreaker Horror and it eats whatever they blocked with. That's cool. But also in this deck, it helps us because if you Manifest Dread and take a non-creature card and put it into play face down as a 2/2 creature, then that's not a token. So it's going to trigger Lonis and get any other Creaturefall triggers that your other cards may have when it comes in, increasing our creature count in our deck, essentially. We've got 35 cards plus Lonis in this deck that are creatures, so we might as well have even more creatures coming in. So let's talk about these actual Manifest Dread cards. We'll start with Valgavoth's Onslaught. This is a sorcery for XX and green that says Manifest Dread X times, and then put X 1/1 counters on each of those creatures. Pretty cool. So let's say X is 1. We're going to spend a total of 3 mana, so 1, 2, and then the green, to get a single instance of Manifest Dread. We look at the top 2, 1 in the graveyard, 1 face down into play as a 2/2, that then gets 1/1 counter. So we spent 3 mana on a 3/3. That's totally fine. But if X is 2, we're going to follow that process twice, getting 2 2/2 creatures into play, and then putting 2 1/1 counters on each, meaning we spent 5 mana for a pair of 4/4s. If we do 3, we're spending 7 mana, but we're getting 3 5/5s into play. Very good rate for all this, and it gives us a bunch of different ways to sort of litter our battlefield with additional face-down creatures, or creatures that are face-down cards, hopefully, which we can flip over, and when we flip them over, they keep their 1/1 counters on them. So if it was a creature card we put into play, Valgavoth's Onslaught encourages us to do that if we can, so we can have those counters persist on whatever creature we may have put in face down once we flip it over. Under the Skin is next. This is 2 and a green for a sorcery that just says Manifest Dread, and then you may return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So we get a little bit of a regrowth effect for the normal 1 and a green, and for an extra mana into it, we're manifesting Dread. So as normal, we manifest Dread, we get a 2/2 creature, and that's 3 mana. That's a Grey Ogre. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if we're getting more value out of it, and we are in the form of pretty good recursion. So yeah, there's that. Under the Skin is similar to Unnerving Grasp, which you've already seen, but I'm pulling it up again to show you that it is the same idea. 3 mana, different color, to manifest Dread and get an additional benefit, which is bouncing any non-land permanent, which in our deck we can use better than simply as a removal spell. Cool. Threats Around Every Corner is next. 3 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters, we manifest Dread, and whenever a face-down permanent we control enters, which is going to happen when we manifest Dread, we get to Rampant Growth. Search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So if Threats Around Every Corner is in play, or when it enters, we manifest Dread, which is going to give us any of our triggers from our other Creaturefall cards, like Lonis, and also we're going to get a land into play we can use. If it stays in play, then we might Unnerving Grasp, or Valgavoth's Onslaught, or Under the Skin, and all of those face-down permanents, those cards we're manifesting Dread with, are going to trigger Threats Around Every Corner again and again and again. Pretty good. it's also possible that we could Threats Around Every Corner, Unnerving Grasp. Unnerving Grasp is not an ideal option here, but just as an example, we play Threats Around Every Corner, we manifest Dread, we get a rampant growth effect. Then we Unnerving Grasp Threats Around Every Corner back into our hand. It will be in our hand before Unnerving Grasp manifests Dread, which is too bad. But then we can replay it, or replay it in any other way. We might be doing our Rebuys, and it will give us another Manifest Dread and find another permanent. Or if we Under the Skin, while Threats Around Every Corner is in play, we get a permanent back from our graveyard to our hand, we Manifest Dread, which will trigger on Threats Around Every Corner, and we're all set. So there's enough cards in here. It's 8 cards. That's not a huge number for putting in face-down permanents, but we've got enough support for this and a lot of card draw in this deck because we're constantly making clues that this is going to give us at least a little bit of good value. And if you don't think that it's enough, well, it's 4 mana for Rampant Growth, which is 2 mana, and Manifest Dread, which is kind of 2 mana as well. 2 mana for a 2/2. There you go. Yeah. Next is Zimone Mystery Unraveler from the Duskmourn Commander product. This is 2, a green and a blue, for a 3/3 legendary human wizard with Landfall. Landfall? So like triggered by Threats Around Every Corner's Rampant Growth effect? Interesting. I don't know why I'm talking like that. I think it's cool. It does work together a little bit. So Zimone says, Landfall, whenever a land we control enters, we manifest Dread, if it's the first time this ability is resolved this turn. Otherwise, we can turn a permanent we control face up. So we don't even have to pay for it for the creatures that we might be flipping face up that are face down. It's also the case that if we manifest Dread and we know we're going to be playing another land or getting another land into play, somehow, then we can manifest a permanent card that's not a creature card. And Zimone will turn it face up, and now we have that permanent in play. Maybe our Soul Ring is on the board face down as a 2/2 creature. Zimone can flip it over, and now we've got access to that Soul Ring right away. Maybe we have a land in play. We flip it over, and now we can use that land. It's no longer a creature, but that's okay. We still got our enters triggers from it being a creature. So, pretty sweet way to flip things up. I also want to make mention that Manifesting Dread, since we're talking about it now, lets us put cards from the top of our library into play face down as a creature. That is a creature, which means we can flicker it as a creature, which means it will leave the battlefield and re-enter face up. So if we have a huge creature face down as a 2/2, or any other permanent card face down as a 2/2, we can flicker that card and it will re-enter as its front face up, so we've cheated those cards into play in a way. We didn't even have to spend mana to do that beyond whatever mana we spent to manifest Dread in the first place. It's also true that we can use our rebuy effects, our bounce effects, to bounce those things back to our hand, which is sort of like we manifested it from the top of our library into play, got our Creaturefall triggers, bounced it to our hand, so it's like we drew it, but in the process made a creature and got all the benefits from a creature entering. Manifest Dread is very cool in this deck, especially with the fun things you can do with it. The one thing I do want to mention, though, is if you manifest a card that is not a permanent card, you cannot turn it face up no matter what. Even Zimone says you may turn a permanent you control face up if that card is not a permanent card on the bottom. Like if it's the face down card is, Ghostly Flicker, let's say. You can't flip that over. The rules prevent non-permanents from being permanents. So it's face down as a 2/2, it's a creature. You flip it over and it would be an instant. That can't happen, so it just has to stay in the same state it's in. Similarly, if you were to flicker that card, it's not going to get cast by re-entering. It just will stay in exile. If you have, Run Away Together, face down as a 2/2 creature, and you flicker it, it will go to exile and it will not come back. It'll just stay in exile. That's how the game treats permanent or non-permanent cards trying to enter the battlefield. They just simply stay in the same zone they were already in. So yeah. However, you can, with those cards, like Run Away Together, you could bounce that creature, the face down 2/2 version of it, to your hand, and now you can cast it normally if you want to. So yeah, different cool ways to do this. And Simone helps us out by giving us landfall, turning into Creaturefall, turning into Artifact Fall with Lonis in play. And if we can get another land into play, we could just turn it face up. I do want to make mention, though, it only manifests Dread if this resolves the first time each turn. Every other time it resolves each turn, we may turn a permanent we control face up. It does not let us manifest Dread additional times in the same turn. Only that first time it resolves. But if we get, 3 lands into play, the first one will let us manifest Dread, and the other 2 will both let us turn permanents we control face up. Pretty cool. Next up is Primordial Mist. This is the card in this deck that doesn't manifest Dread, it does regular manifest. We'll talk about it in a moment. 4 and a blue for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, you may manifest the top card of your library. I guess we're talking about it now. Manifest is not Manifest Dread. It's almost the same, though. It's the same process as Manifest Dread, except rather than looking at 2 cards and putting one face down as a 2/2 and one in your graveyard, you just look at one card and it just goes face down as a 2/2. It just enters as a face 2 or as a 2/2 face down, and you can flip it over if it's a creature card for its mana cost. Nothing goes in your graveyard, though, so you don't get any selection. But yeah, you have gotten the same benefit in our deck of manifesting a card. I did tag it as Manifest Dread rather than making this entire section just called Manifest for a single card. The reason for that is because I want you to remember that Manifest Dread does several different things for you and is the theme here, even though Primordial Mist is a little bit of an exception to it. Much like Silverback Elder doesn't really have a Creaturefall trigger, it has a cast trigger, but similar enough that it falls into that same category, just so you understand. What's great about this is it gives you a free manifest at your end step every turn, so you're triggering Lonis and any other Creaturefall triggers you may have every turn. And if you have Y'shtola in play, you get 2 end steps, so you get to do this twice. Pretty neat. Now, speaking of Y'shtola, as well as Conjurer's Closet, it is worth noting that when those triggers of those 2 cards go on the stack, you have to choose a target right away. Which means if you have, let's say, Primordial Mist and Conjurer's Closet in play at the same time, you cannot manifest the top card of your library from Primordial Mist and then flicker it with Conjurer's Closet, because you would have had to choose the target for Conjurer's Closet's ability as soon as that ability went on the stack, and at which point Primordial Mist's ability is also on the stack and has not resolved. So there's no card manifested yet. But if Y'shtola's in play, you could go to your end step, manifest something, and flicker something with Y'shtola, and then go to your second end step and flicker whatever you manifested with Y'shtola, and manifest something else. So, options. Also, Primordial Mist says, exile a face-down permanent you control face up, that is the cost of this ability, and then you may play that card this turn. You still pay its cost and timing rules still apply. So this is another way, like Zimone, that we get to take our cards that have entered face down and use them, even if they are not creatures. We don't have to cast it if Zimone is flipping it over for us. But if we want to cast it and get the cast trigger, like maybe we have our Silverback Elder in play, we can activate Primordial Mist, exile our face-down creature, and it goes into exile face up. And we'll be able to cast it this turn. We just pay for its cost. So this is sort of a rebuy in a way. We're not really rebuying because we didn't buy it the first time. That's why I haven't tagged it in that section. But it's a similar play pattern. However, what if we have Ghostly Flicker, like I mentioned before, or Run Away Together, face down as a 2/2 creature? Well, we can use Primordial Mist to exile that card at instant speed, then cast it at instant speed because we're allowed to play it this turn. It says play, which means if we have a face-down creature, we can exile it and then play it as our land drop for that turn, if we haven't made one already. So yeah, Primordial Mist gives us an awful lot of options with the face-down creatures we have, or face-down theme we have in this deck, and empowers itself to do that as well. So this is a pretty good sort of a kickback for not being able to manifest Dread with it, and thereby not getting any selection when we manifest the top card of our library. Cool. Next is a pretty similar card, actually, but an actual Duskmourn card. They came from the pipes. This is 4 and a blue for an enchantment that says when it enters, we manifest dread twice. So we do the whole process twice. Look at 2, put 1 into play, put 1 in the graveyard, and then do it all over again. And then it says whenever a face-down creature we control enters, we draw a card. So we're going to manifest dread twice. So it's going to see us put those face-down creatures into play and draw us a card for each one. So this is 4 and double blue to make 2 face-down 2/2s and to draw 2 cards. And then every other time we have another face-down creature enter, we draw a card. Pretty good. Just being able to manifest dread twice for 5 is all right. Getting 2 cards out of it makes it great, and being able to keep doing this because we have plenty of other ways to manifest or manifest dread, very nice. Curator Beastie is next. This card is great to flicker or to rebuy. This is 4 and double green for a 6/6 beast with reach that gives all of our colorless creatures the ability to enter with 2 1/1 counters on them. I know you're thinking, how many colorless creatures do we have? Well, every one of our face down cards is a colorless creature with no name. So Curator Beastie makes our manifested cards, our manifested creatures, come in with 2 counters on them. Great. And Curator Beastie has a Titan trigger. When this creature enters or attacks, we manifest dread. So it'll enter as a 6/6 reach and manifest dread, and that 2/2 will come in with 2 counters on it. So it's 6 mana to make 10 power onto the battlefield. The 6/6 itself and a 4/4 manifested creature, face-down creature. So that helps us again when we attack with the Beastie. Now we've got 2 4/4s in play and the Beastie attacking, and that seems great. And just like with It Came From the Pipes, this helps us this part helps us with all of our face-down creatures, and, any colorless creatures we might get in other ways. Maybe from casting from our deck, maybe from stealing with Lonis. If we steal someone's, Meteor Golem, let's say, it'll come in with 2 1/1 counters on it. That seems good too. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we do have other colorless creatures in this deck. We've got the Anti-Causal Vestige. It's an Eldrazi. So yeah, there you go. And that covers our Manifest Dread section. Let's go now to the last section in our game plan, which is our clues section. We just have some clues. You can get a clue. These are ways to make clues without relying on Lonis. Not very many of them, but several are repeatable. So, Forensic Gadgeteer is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Vidalcan Artificer Detective. Lonis, this version of Lonis is not a detective, but the newer version of Lonis is. And Forensic Gadgeteer says whenever we cast an artifact spell, we investigate. So we get another clue token. We are running 14 artifact spells in this deck. So pretty good. Good ways to make these clues. But what if we don't happen to draw any when our Gadgeteer's in play? Well, they do something else for us. Activated abilities of artifacts we control cost 1 generic mana less to activate, but that can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. Specifically, what this helps us with is it makes our clues cost 1 to crack rather than 2. So we can crack twice as many of them if we're not doing it for Lonis' activated ability and we just want to draw cards. This turns our clues into pay 1, sack this, draw a card. Very good. We also have Root Out. This is 2 and a green for a sorcery that destroys an artifact or an enchantment and then investigates. So sorcery speed naturalize that comes with a clue, pretty alright, not bad. Ethereal Investigator is next. Really fun card to be able to flicker or rebuy. 3 and a blue, goodness, for a 2/3 Flying Spirit that says when it enters, we investigate a number of times equal to the number of opponents we have. So if we have 3 opponents, it's going to come in with 3 clues. Already good. And then, whenever we draw our second card each turn, we make a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So, we've got plenty of ways to draw in this deck, different ways to trigger it, but particularly we have a bunch of clues. So, if we use a clue, we're going to be drawing a card, but also making a 1/1 flyer to help us out. It seems solid. Mechanized Production is next. Really, really fun. 2 and double blue for an aura that enchants an artifact we control. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. This is already sweet. Like, we put this on our Soul Ring, and at the every one of our upkeeps, we get an extra soul ring unless our opponents remove the soul ring or mechanized production. That's crazy, you know? We have other cool artifacts in this deck, but just think about that. A bonus soul ring for free every turn. But then, if we control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. It does not say if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as the enchanted artifact. So we can put this on our soul ring, and then if we go to our next upkeep, we make a copy of the soul ring, and if we have 8 clues, we win the game. So no reason to put this on a clue unless that's the only artifact we have in play. We put it on the best artifact that we want more of, which, you know, it could be a clue, but no reason for it to be. So mechanized production just cares that we have 8 or more artifacts that have the same name. And if we do, at our upkeep, we win the game. This is not too hard to deal with. Our opponent can easily destroy mechanized production or the artifact that it's on, so it falls off and then goes to the graveyard. And if they don't, we're getting good value or we're just ending the game. Both are solid. There's a whole turn cycle for people to interact with it. Yeah, seems good. Last in the section is the Third Doctor from the Doctor Who set. This gentleman here, I don't know much about Doctor Who, does not seem like this would be a big scary creature, but it sure is. For 2, a green and a blue, we get a 2/2 legendary Time Lord Doctor with Trample. 2/2 with Trample, okay. It gets +1/+1 for each non-creature token you control. Okay, here we go. So our Thopters don't do anything for it, but our clues sure do. So if we have 4 clues in play, this is a Colossal Dreadmaw, a 6/6 Trample. If we have 12 clues in play, this is a 14/14 Trampler. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. In addition, when it enters, we can create a clue, a food, or a treasure. If you're not aware, we know what clues do. Foods are predefined artifact tokens that say pay 2 and tap and sacrifice to gain 3 life. Treasures just say tap and sacrifice to make a mana of any color. So typically, we're bringing the Third Doctor in and we're making that treasure token. We want treasures for the same reason we wanted them with the Gallic Readers, because it gives us a little bit of ramp. The Third Doctor does not give us a tapped treasure token, so we can use it right away if we want. It's fine if we want to make a food. Totally okay. But usually we're making clues, since we can use them with Lonis, or treasure, most preferably, to ramp us. And any of those, all of those rather, any of those options counts as a non-creature token, so the Doctor gets bigger from it. So the Doctor really comes in, enters, does this, maybe does it again if we have, Starfield Vocalist in play, doubling our enters triggers. But in any case, comes in, makes one of these tokens, and is now a 3/3 Trample for 4, which is not superlative, but only gets bigger from there. Cool. That is our clues section, and oh hey, did you just like the video? Nice, thank you. I'm just kidding. You don't have to like it if you don't want to. I just appreciate you watching. Thank you for being here. So there's more where that came from. Before we get into our supplemental categories, however, I want to go back over these support sections. I want to see how we're supporting our game plan and doing what a lot of people call eating your vegetables. We're going to start with our card advantage section, which, as usual, I have tagged as draw. Not because all these cards actually do the draw a card action, but because these all give us access to more cards we can use in specific ways. For example, we've already seen the Dour Port Mage. It does draw us a card whenever one or more of our creatures leave the battlefield without dying. Idol of Oblivion also draws us a card. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact that if we tap it, we can draw a card if we've created a token this turn. So in a way, this means cast a creature, have it enter, Lonis will trigger, we get a clue token. Then we tap Idol of Oblivion to immediately draw a card because that clue token is a token. Great. So this is a way for us to usually in this deck, from all the creatures we're casting, the way we're flickering them, the rebuying, and so forth, even the manifesting. Idol of Oblivion typically reads tap, draw a card, activate once per turn. That's generally how it plays out. It also has the ability for us to pay 8 and tap it and sacrifice the idol to make a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. This does not come up that often. Drawing more and more cards without having to crack our clues is usually pretty solid on its own, but we do have this option here, and it is a colorless creature, so it is gonna enter with some counters thanks to our beastie if we wanted to do that. So yeah, pretty solid. Next we have another avatar card. This is Waterbender Ascension. I really like these Ascension cards. 1 and a blue for an enchantment that says whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we put a quest counter on this enchantment. Quest counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this card. And then, part of the same trigger, if it has 4 or more quest counters on it, we draw a card. Cool. So, the 4th time we have a creature deal combat damage to a player, and every time thereafter, Waterbender Ascension is going to draw us a card. Essentially, this is Coastal Piracy that we just have to level up to. It's every creature has Curiosity once we have at least 3 counters on this. That seems good. It also says Waterbend for 4, which remember, we can tap our creatures to help pay for it, or pay mana into it, or most likely, tap our artifacts to do this. We can tap treasures, food, especially our clues. We don't have to sacrifice any of them to do it, just tap them down, and we're paying our Waterbend cost. So usually, we are doing this once or sometimes 2 or 3 times in this deck with just our many, many clues. And when we activate this, target creature can't be blocked this turn, which of course lets us attack with it to do combat damage to a player, to get a quest counter on it, and eventually draw a card. Neat. We've seen Garruk's Uprising. It draws us a card when it comes in, if we have a ferocious creature, or while it's in, whenever a ferocious creature comes in. Next we have another Waterbend card. It's Spirit Water Revival. This is 1 and double blue for a sorcery that says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, you may Waterbend 6. That's a big Waterbend cost, total of 9 mana, but 6 of it we can pay by just tapping our clues or whatever, or even our creatures, that's fine. So what it says is we draw 2 cards. So a little bit different configuration of mana, but 3 mana to draw 2 at sorcery speed, that's divination, that's fine. But if its additional cost was paid, instead, we shuffle our graveyard into our library, draw 7 cards, and have no maximum size for the rest of the game. And either way, whether we do that or not, we exile Spirit Water Revival. So this is not just a wheel effect. It's a wheel that does not shuffle our hand back in. We're just shuffling our graveyard into our library. So all those things that we manifest dreaded to the graveyard, they're now back in our library. So if we have Spirit Water Revival and like 4 other cards in hand, we now have 11 cards in hand because we don't have to shuffle our hand in, and we're drawing 7. And we have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. So being able to get this as a draw 7, just by tapping 6 clues in addition to paying its 3 mana cost, very, very impressive and a lot of fun. So yeah, we want to be able to do that. But it's also fine to just use this as a weirdly costed divination if you want to. Primordial Mist we've already seen, but it lets us get a free manifest at every end step, and it lets us exile those cards so that we can play them this turn, which is sort of like drawing them from the battlefield, if you want to think of it that way. So a little bit of card advantage, albeit slow and, uncontrolled, like most draws. They Came from the Pipes draws us a card every time a face-down creature we control enters. Anti-Causal Vestige, when it leaves the battlefield, draws us a card, and then we get to put a permanent into play. Season of Weaving is next. This is one of our board wipes. It's 4 and double blue for a sorcery that says choose up to 5 paw prints worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. So the way this works is we can spend a resource of 5 paw prints on any combination of these abilities. So for 1 print, we can draw a card. So if we want, we can spend all 5 to just be 6 mana, draw 5 cards. That's a possibility. For 2 paw prints, we can choose an artifact or creature we control and create a token that's a copy of it. So if we were to make a copy of a creature or artifact that we stole using Lonis, then we have a token copy of that thing, and we do own that one. So we don't want to flicker it, but because it's a token. But yeah, if that's relevant to us, then there's that. Or for 3 paw prints, we can return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. So this is a sweet, sweet ability because it means we don't bounce anything that is a land or anything that is a token. So all of our clues stick around while all of our creatures and, other permanents that aren't lands bounce to our hand, and so do all of the ones on our opponent's boards. So this is a Wrath, doesn't hit tokens, doesn't hit lands, but it does hit everything else, and that's pretty great. Cool things we can do with this are, for one, I didn't list it as such because it's just a big deal, but this is a rebuy effect. this lets us bounce all of our creatures back to our hand that we can use to recast. That includes Lonis, though, so we may not get much value out of it. Unless we choose to make a copy of Lonis first. Now, I know what you're thinking. If we copy a legendary creature, don't we have to legend rule one of them away before all of these bounce? And the answer is no. Because the way the legend rule works is it uses state-based actions. State-based actions are checked every time any player would receive priority. So that means nobody has priority in the middle of a spell's resolution. So we would need for Season of Weaving to be finished resolving before state-based actions are checked. So if we were to, say, make a copy of Lonis and draw 3 cards, that's going to resolve. We'll draw our 3 cards, we'll get our copy of Lonis, and we will have to legend rule either the copy or the original away. But if we choose the 2-paw mode and the 3-paw mode, we will make a copy of Lonis and then bounce the original Lonis, and then state-based actions will be checked, and we just get to keep our token copy of Lonis because that's the only one we control. The other one's in our hand. Or, I guess, in the command zone if we want to do that, which don't do that. Keep your commander in your hand. So yeah, we can keep our Lonis if we want to with this, and yeah, that's pretty neat. But it's also fine if you want to just say, I'm going to draw a card, and I'm going to make a copy of one thing and a copy of another thing. Totally fine. Season of Weaving is a lot of fun. Next we have Shimmer Dragon, originally from the Brawl decks that were actually printed in paper for Throne of Eldraine, my favorite set. This was in, I believe, the Alayla deck? Alayla Artful Provocateur, I believe? Anyway, Shimmer Dragon is 4 and double blue for a 5/6 dragon with flying that says, as long as we control 4 or more artifacts, it has hexproof. So all of our clues are cluing the dragon in to a way to protect itself, I guess? I don't know. But in any case, we're going to have plenty of artifacts to keep this 5/6 flyer hexproof, probably for as long as we have it, unless we cash them all in to use Lonis' second ability, but that's also fine. We can also tap 2 untapped artifacts we control to draw a card. So what's so great about clues, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is that we can sacrifice them when they're tapped, so tapping them doesn't matter. We can do it for waterbend costs, or we can do it with the Shimmer Dragon, tapping 2 of them and drawing a card. Don't even have to pay mana for that. If we've got 8 of our clues in play, and we get to the end step of our opponent to the right, we just tap all 8 of them, activating the Shimmer Dragon's last ability 4 times, and start our turn with 4 extra cards in hand. Sounds great. Last in this section is Thought Monitor. This is 6 and a blue for a 2/2 artifact creature construct with affinity for artifacts. That means it costs 1 generic less to cast for each artifact we control. So if we have, let's say, 6 clues in play, this is a 2/2 flyer for a single blue, because it reduces that 6 generic cost down to nothing. It can't continue to reduce it because it only reduces the generic cost, but we can and in this deck often do, play this card as a 2/2 flyer for 1. That when it enters, we draw 2 cards. That's why it's in this section. It could be a 2-mana draw 2 that comes with a Wind Drake. Just very, very powerful in this deck. And that is our draw section, our card advantage section. Let's talk now about acceleration, which as usual I've just tagged as ramp. So we've got our Soul Ring. Of course, we're running a Soul Ring. This is 1 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. It's very powerful. It's the symbol of the format. You should put it in your deck. Similarly, Arcane Signet, 2 generic mana for an untapped mana rock that makes 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, blue or green. A 2 mana untapped rock that makes all of our colors, which is to say both our colors, but yeah, all of our colors. Yeah, we definitely want that. Next is Farseek. This is the rampant growth for our deck. 1 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search our library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So why are we running this instead of just rampant growth? Because it does not say basic. We don't have any plains, swamps, or mountains in this deck, but we do have plenty of islands. In fact, we're a little bit more blue than we are green. But that doesn't mean we don't need to shore up our green. So we have a couple of dual-typed lands that are both islands and forests. This doesn't say search your library for a non-forest land card. It says search your library for an island. So if we just find our Sodden Verdure, let's say, we've found a forest island, we get it into play, and once it's untapped, because of course it will come in tapped, we've got access to green and blue from Farseek. Pretty good. And I know you're thinking, why aren't we running Nature's Lore as well, which finds a forest and puts it into play untapped? Well, because Nature's Lore is like $3.50 versus this 73-cent card. And we really want to try and get more of our ramp from creatures if we can help it. But yeah, Farseek's just very nice in this deck. We've seen Gallic Readers. It lets us make a tapped treasure every time we have a creature come in. Academy Manufacturer is next. This card is $6 for a reason. It is really annoying to play against, and can get a little bit out of hand to play with, but it's so good in this deck, it's definitely worth running, and it was originally printed in Modern Horizons 2, which is where Lonis is from. Am I wrong? Yeah, Modern Horizons 2. Yeah, so there you go. What it says is, it is a 3 generic mana, 1/3 artifact creature assembly worker. Love this old creature type, which again, another colorless creature for our beastie to help. And it says, if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create one of each. So this is a replacement effect. It looks at whether or not we're making any one of these tokens and says, instead of making that token, make all 3 of these tokens. So every time Lonis triggers, if Academy Manufacturer enters the battlefield when Lonis is in play, Lonis is going to see it, it's going to try and make a clue, and the manufacturer is going to say, don't make a clue, a food, and a treasure. Sweet. That's why it's in our acceleration section, because every time we make any one of these things, we're getting an untapped treasure. That seems good. Next is Clement. We've seen Clement makes all of our frogs tap for green or blue that we can only spend our creature spells. That's solid. Inspiring Statuary is next. For 3 generic mana, we get an artifact that makes all of our non-artifact spells have Improvise. Improvise means Improvise is sort of like Waterbend in a way. It reduces the generic mana cost of those non-artifact spells for each artifact that we tap when we're casting it. Now, we can't use this on artifact spells, of course, as we've seen, but we can tap our artifacts to help us cast our spells. It's not the same as Affinity, though. Affinity simply reduces the cost of the mana we have to pay. Inspiring Statuary still requires us to pay all that mana, but we can use our artifacts to pay for the generic costs, which means we can use all of our clues to make mana, essentially, or to pay for a mana cost, I should say, for our non-artifact spells. Seems great in a deck that's making so many little artifact tokens. If we've got Inspiring Statuary out and Academy Manufacturer, lots of little tokens that we can tap that are all artifacts, of course. Tireless Provisioner is next. This is 2 and a green for an Elf Scout. It's a 3/2 with a landfall ability. When one of our lands comes in, we make a food or a treasure. Great. So Lonis makes us a clue when we have creatures come in. Tireless Provisioner makes us a food or a treasure whenever our lands come in. So we've got our bases covered. I usually have this make treasures because it's not in the acceleration section for no reason, obviously. Food can be good for us if we're really looking for a life, but being able to accelerate ourselves is usually even better. And of course, that treasure token, Academy Manufacturer, will make a clue and a food for us to go with it as well. Next, we have Michelangelo. We've already seen Michelangelo. When he does combat damage to a player, we can put a creature or land card from our hand onto the battlefield. That puts land into play, which is acceleration, but also sort of ramps out that creature. We didn't have to pay for the creature, so same idea, yeah. New Generation's technique is Explosive Vegetation that we might be able to pay a little less for by bouncing one of our creatures, and then we get to rebuy that creature. The Third Doctor comes in and makes a clue, food, or treasure, so we usually have it make a treasure since we're not hurting for clues in this deck, which is acceleration. Threats Around Every Corner lets us Rampant Growth whenever a face-down permanent we control enters. Silverback Elder gives us the ability to look at the top 5 whenever we cast a creature spell and put a land from among those 5 onto the battlefield tapped. Neat. Anti-Causal Vestige, when it leaves the battlefield, lets us put a permanent into play, and that could be a land. And finally, we have Radiant Lotus. 6 generic mana for an artifact from Aetherdrift that says tap and sacrifice one or more artifacts, choose a color, and target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sacked this way. So this is not exactly what I'm about to say, but it's kind of like now all of our artifacts, especially our clues, are Black Lotuses. We tap the Lotus, so we can only do this once per turn, and we sacrifice, let's say, 3 clues, and then we choose the color blue. Each of our clues that we've sacrificed puts 3 blue in our pool. So we had these clues that we got for free, and we're turning them into an absurd amount of mana. Now, we can't do that multiple times over the course of the turn because we need to tap the Lotus to do it, but being able to do this every turn, very cool. That covers our acceleration section. Let's take a look now at our interaction, which, as usual, I've tagged as removal. So Haywire Might is our first one. This is a colorless creature. It's 1 generic mana for a 1/1 artifact creature, insect, that says when it dies, we gain 2 life. Sure, I'll take it. And if we pay a green and sacrifice it, we can exile a non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. So it's not quite the same as a naturalize, because we can't hit creature enchantments or artifacts, but we do get to exile it, and that's pretty alright. In addition, it only costs us a single green and sack the might, and when we sack it, we gain 2 life. Seems good. Runaway Together, we've already seen. It lets us bounce 2 creatures controlled by different players, so it can help us and bounce something of our opponents, or just bounce 2 of our opponents' things. Next up is our Chomping Changeling. This is 2 and a green for a 1/2 shapeshifter from the recent Lorwyn Eclipse set. It has Changeling, which means it is every creature type. That might be relevant. We'll talk about it in a moment. It says when it enters, we destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So this is Reclamation Sage with reversed power and toughness. I think the Rec Sage is a 2/1. So why are we running the Changeling? Because it has Changeling, which means it's every creature type, which means it's a frog. So it gets all the benefits of being a frog, at the very least of which is Clement makes it tap for green or blue that we can only spend on creature spells. But turning a Rec Sage into a mana dork as well seems pretty good to me. It's not an interaction that comes up that often, but being able to naturalize something and also get Creaturefall triggers, that seems good. Next we have Imprisoned in the Moon. 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature, land, or planeswalker and makes that permanent into a colorless land that taps for colorless mana and causes it to lose all other card types and abilities. So this is a great way to shut down your opponent's creatures, or planeswalkers of course. It does ramp them a little bit, giving them the ability to tap that card for colorless mana. But the way I like to look at this is, what if your opponent has a really good commander? Well, if they don't have a way to stop you from imprisoning that commander in the moon, and they don't have a way to interact with their own lands or remove this aura, well then their commander is just locked down until they have one of those answers. So yeah, being able to shut it down for probably a little while maybe takes their deck offline, at least partially, for a small amount of time. It could be that they are going to draw a disenchant spell that same next turn, or maybe they need to make a plan with someone else, a deal, or even with us to try and remove Imprisoned in the Moon. Or maybe they have to juke into something like, well, can I make my deck work without my commander? A lot of decks really rely on their commander, so this can be a great play. It just depends on what works for you and your pod. Next up, we've seen Root Out. It is Sorcery Speed Naturalize that comes with a clue. Unnerving Grasp bounces a non-land permanent, doesn't have to be one of ours, and manifests Dread. Next we have Illithid Harvester from Battle for Baldur's Gate. This is an adventure creature. So the way this works is it is a creature that has a sorcery built onto the card. You can either cast it as a creature, in which case you sort of ignore the sorcery, or you can cast it as a sorcery, and when you do, you exile it as it resolves, and then you can cast the creature half from exile. You don't even have to do it on a later turn the way you would with Warp. But it is worth noting, if the creature is in play, you cannot then cast the sorcery while it's in play. You would have to bounce this back to your hand and recast as the sorcery, which would again exile the Harvester and let you cast the Harvester from exile. That's how adventures work. So what do these actually do? Well, the adventure, Plant Tadpoles, is X and double blue for a sorcery that taps X creatures and causes them not to untap during their controller's next untap steps, which means it's sort of like they have stun counters on them without actually having a stun counter. But it's only 2 mana, and then we just pay as much more as we want to tap down a bunch of creatures. If we want to attack an opponent, and that opponent has 6 creatures, for the cost of 8 mana, which is a lot, we can tap down all of those creatures so that none of our creatures can be blocked, and those creatures won't untap during their next untap step, so they are wide open for every other player that comes before them, in addition to every other player that comes after them until their next turn, with the exception of whatever creatures they may play on their next turn. So this can really mess someone up, giving them, making them completely open for ultimately not that much mana. 2 mana plus 1 for every creature we're tapping down, pretty okay. But if that's not all we want to do with it, we can also, after we've cast the Plant Tadpoles, we can play our Illithid's Harvester. This is 4 and a blue for a 4/4 horror with Ceramorphosis. When this creature enters, turn any number of target tapped non-token creatures face down. They are 2/2 horrors. This does not say until end of turn. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, you with your commander and your 3 other non-token creatures, we're going to tap those down with Plant Tadpoles. We're going to attack in. You don't get to untap them during your next untap step, so on our next turn, if we didn't want to do it the same turn, we're going to cast the Harvester. All of those creatures that are not tokens, that are still tapped, turn them face down. They are now 2/2 horror creatures that have no other abilities, permanently. They're colorless, they don't have their abilities, they're just 2/2s. Do what you will with them. This is sort of a Humble effect, if you think of it that way. Humble normally makes something into a no abilities 1/1 creature. Making them into 2/2s is pretty similar to our manifested cards, which is okay. It's just kind of funny being able to turn the tide on our opponents and use this horrible Illithid mind control monster in this way. So it's not removing the creatures from play, but Plant Tadpoles does give us a little evasion for them and remove them for a moment, but then it removes their abilities if we Ceramorphosis them with the Harvester's Enters trigger when they come in. So yeah, neat. In addition, we do not have to do this on creatures that were tapped down with Plant Tadpoles. We can just say, oh, you just attacked us or attacked someone else and your whole board is tapped from that. Well, we'll play the Harvester. Now your whole board is a bunch of tapped 2/2 horrors that have no abilities. Good luck. Pretty cool. And I guess I should make mention, both for the Harvester and Imprisoned in the Moon. If you hit someone's commander with this, they don't get to put it in the command zone because it didn't change zones. It just changed types and lost its abilities. The same is true of the Harvester. It's being flipped face down if we were hitting a commander with this, if the commander was tapped, but it's not changing zones, so they don't get to respond by putting it in the command zone. Just so you know, this can pretty much lock someone down pretty good. Silverback Elder, we've already seen. If we cast a creature spell, we can destroy an artifact or enchantment. Just a nice little naturalize effect. Hullbreaker Horror lets us bounce non-land permanents whenever we cast a spell, in addition to bouncing spells that we don't control. So we can even be a little protective here, getting spells off the stack. I mean, they're going to go back to their owner's hands, so they could be recast, but not in this moment. And finally in this section, a card I truly love is Junkwinder. This is 5 and double blue for a 5/6 serpent with affinity for tokens. That means it's like affinity for artifacts, but its generic cost is reduced for each token we control rather than each artifact. So even though our clues are artifact tokens, the only part that matters about them is that they're tokens. If we have 5 of those in play, we get a 5/6 serpent for just 2 blue mana. Great. But not just that, whenever a token of any sort, clues, treasure, tapped treasure tokens, Thopters, doesn't matter. Whenever a token we control enters, we tap a non-land permanent that an opponent controls, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Just like with our Plant Tadpoles adventure. Junkwinder can absolutely wreck an opponent's ability to block, to attack. We can shut them down. Very, very cool. And we get it just by having our tokens enter. Great. In addition, look at this big serpent who's talking to some squirrels. It's great. I love the Junkwinder. Also, of course, another Modern Horizons 2 card. Just great. So that covers our interaction section. We are running 2 Wraths in this deck. We've already seen Season of Weaving. It lets us have the ability to bounce every non-land, non-token permanent if we pay 3 paw prints into it. We're also running Perplexing Test. This is 3 and double blue for an instant that says choose one, return all creature tokens to their owner's hands, or return all non-token creatures to their owner's hands. So just like I mentioned with Season of Weaving, being able to bounce all of our permanents is technically a rebuy effect, but I didn't put it in that section simply because it's more of a wrath. The same is true of Perplexing Test. If we choose its second ability, we can take all of our non-token creatures, put them back in our hand, rebuy their effects. That seems good. Lonis is very cheap to recast, so we can even get a bunch of good clues out of that. However, most of our tokens are not creatures. So if we're playing against an opponent who has an awful lot of creature tokens, like if that's their strategy, we can also use this mode for Perplexing Test and just make those tokens go away forever. That seems pretty good too. Good options for us. And that covers all of our support cards. We're going to go through the supplemental categories now, starting with the one card that I've tagged as Wincons. It's Mechanized Production. We've already seen it. I just wanted to call it out because it does have this "you win the game" clause in it. Which is always worth calling out for cards in your deck. It's worth knowing that you have that ability. So that is our Wincon section. Now we're going to go to our Payoffs section. These are cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. We've already seen Dour Portmage. It rewards us with a card draw whenever one of our creatures leaves the battlefield without dying. Idol of Oblivion lets us tap it if we make a token to draw a card. Academy Manufactor cares about us making clues, but also treasures and food, by giving us one of each whenever we would make one of any. Stride Hanger Automaton kind of works in a similar way. This is 3 generic mana, again, another colorless creature, amazing, for a 1/4 artifact creature construct that gives all of our Thopters +1/+1. Now, I've mentioned Thopters a couple of times, but we haven't seen them yet. Here's the reason why. Stride Hanger Automaton says if one or more artifact tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying are created instead. So Thopters are 1/1 artifact creature tokens, and they fly. But while the Stride Hanger Automaton's in play, they get +1/+1. So this is making Wind Drakes 2/2 flyers for us, essentially, every time we make any artifact tokens. Now it says one or more, so it doesn't really interact with our Academy Manufactor. It's not like, oh, we're going to make a clue, and this makes that into a clue, food, and treasure, and that means this gets us a Thopter for each one. No, it says one or more. So no matter which order we stack, quote unquote, these replacement effects in, we're still going to just get a clue, a food, a treasure, and a Thopter. Thankfully, they thought about this. So Stride Hanger Automaton means whenever we have a creature enter, we're getting not just that clue from our commander, but we're also getting a 1/1 flyer that is a 2/2 flyer for as long as the automaton's in play. Seems good. Ethereal Investigator pays us off whenever we draw our second card each turn by giving us a 1/1 Flying Spirit. Mechan Assembler, we also haven't seen yet. This is 4 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature, Robot Artificer, that says whenever another artifact we control enters, make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token, but only once each turn. So not an enormous payoff for us, but something of a payoff. We get a free 2/2, which can block, which can attack, which can be sacrificed, whatever we need to do with it, every turn. Basically every turn, including the turn the Mechan Assembler comes in if Lonis is already in play. If with Lonis in, it will see the Mechan Assembler enter, which will make a clue. Mechan Assembler is in that point, it has entered by that point, so that clue enters, and we get to have a 2/2 robot in addition. Great. We're not making that many creature tokens in this deck, but they sure can help us as chump blockers by getting in a little bit of extra damage for things like Waterbender Ascension. You know, they can't hurt to have. So that's why we have things like Stride Hanger Automaton and Ethereal Investigator and Mechan Assembler making us these creature tokens. Kappa Cannoneer is next, an incredible card that was originally printed in the Neon Dynasty Commander product, but they recently reprinted it in Modern Horizons 3. Crazy for Blastoise, come on. This is 5 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature, Turtle Warrior with Improvise. Just like we saw Improvise before on our Inspiring Statuary, this card, we can pay for its colorless cost by tapping artifacts if we wish to. So if we have 6 clues in play, we can tap all of them in a single blue and get our 4/4 Turtle Warrior. That has Ward 4. That's basically basically hexproof. Not entirely, but it's like, do you want to interact with this creature or do you want to do anything else on your turn? Yeah. It also says, whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, put a 1/1 counter on this creature and it can't be blocked this turn. Another artifact you control. That's the payoff for Kappa Cannoneer. Every time we have a creature enter, including itself, we're going to be making a clue with Lonis, which means we're going to get a counter on the Cannoneer, and the Cannoneer is going to be unblockable. So if Lonis is in play, the Cannoneer enters, it sees itself enter, and puts a counter on itself. Lonis sees it enter and makes a clue. The Cannoneer sees the clue, and it puts a counter on itself. So it comes in as a 6/6 for 6 with Ward 4. We've got a clue sitting there, and even though it's got Summoning Sickness, it sure can't be blocked this turn. Don't worry, next turn we'll play any other creature, trigger Lonis, which will trigger the Cannoneer, which will let us attack in for at least 7 damage. It's great. This really gets out of hand, and is therefore, like the Champion of Lambhold I mentioned earlier in the video, a bit of a removal magnet. So it's removal bait. Pretty good. Last in the section is the Junk Winder. It taps down a non-land permanent an opponent controls that won't tap during its controller's next untap step every time we make a token. One thing I didn't say about the Junk Winder, I kind of focused on the fact that it will tap down creatures, but it does say non-land permanent. So if an opponent has, I don't know, a bunch of mana rocks and we're making a bunch of tokens, we can sure tap down their mana rocks and limit their mana over the course of their turn. If they have other cool things that they're tapping to get value, like other artifacts or, I don't know, what else do you tap? Not many things. But then we can tap those down too. Sure. Who knows? Maybe they have a Howling Mine, so we don't want that to work on our turn, I guess, or on their turn, because it was a mono artifact originally. Yeah, that's a possibility. So yes, that is our payoff section. And let's talk now about all of the different ways we have synergy in this deck. We've got 3 synergy sections. We're going to start with our abilities. These are cards that the synergy of them is that they change the way our abilities work. For example, we've already seen Forensic Gadgeteer making our activated abilities of artifacts cost 1 less to activate. Mutagen Man from the recent TMNT set also does that. However, it does not have the text that the Forensic Gadgeteer does that prevents that reduction from reducing the mana cost to less than 1 mana. Mutagen Man can make our activated abilities of our tokens cost 1 less all the way down to 0. So if we have Mutagen Man and the Forensic Gadgeteer in play at the same time, then Forensic Gadgeteer is reducing their cost, the cost of our clues activation cost to just 1, and Mutagen Man is reducing them 1 more, so now we can crack clues for free. Crazy. But that's not all. Mutagen Man is X at double green for a 2/3 legendary ooze mutant with trample. So if we pay 0 into it, it's a 2/3 with trample for 2. That's already good. But we want to pay some mana into it if we can, because when Mutagen Man enters, we make X mutagen tokens. This is another predefined token that we can use with its text, which is pay 1, tap, and sack it to put a 1/1 counter on our creature, but at sorcery speed. And since Mutagen Man reduces that, it's just tap and sack it without paying any mana. But we can also just keep those mutagen tokens around as ways to affect our cards that have affinity, to tap them for waterbending or for improvise. They're just another predefined token that gets to stick around for us, increasing our token count, increasing our artifact count, helping us out in a lot of ways. So Forensic Gadgeteer and Mutagen Man are doing similar things for us synergistically. Similarly, Starfield Vocalist, we've already seen, it doubles our triggers for our enters. It doubles all of our enters triggers, I should say. Whereas Adrix and Nev double our token creation. This is a replacement effect that makes us make twice as many tokens. So Adrix and Nev is a 2/2 legendary Merfolk wizard for 2 a green and a blue with Ward 2, originally printed in the Commander 21 product for Strixhaven, as I think the face commander, in fact. Yeah, it was. But I'm using the special guest reprint from Secrets of Strixhaven, simply because it's like a little more than half the price. And it looks great. Look at this. So yeah, it just says if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many tokens are created instead. This absolutely changes the texture of your deck. If you're having Adrix and Nev enter when Lonis is in play, Lonis is going to see it, trigger once, and make 2 clues, because it should make 1 clue, but Adrix and Nev says make twice as many. If we had Academy Manufacturer in play, we wouldn't make a clue, a treasure, and a food. We'd make 2 of each of them. If we had our Stridehanger Automaton in as well, we would also make 2 extra Thopters. So many extra tokens with Adrix and Nev, totally worth it for us. Love this card. That is our ability synergy section. We're right here ready for our counts synergy section. I'm using counts to represent the fact that all these cards care about the number of a certain kind of thing in play. For example, mechanized production, we win the game if we have 8 or more artifacts with the same name. The third Doctor gets a +1/+1 bonus for each non-creature token we have. Shimmer Dragon, as long as we have 4 or more artifacts in play, it has hexproof. Junkwinder cares about the number of tokens we have because it has affinity for tokens, and Thought Monitor has affinity for artifacts in the same way, so they both just care about those numbers. The last card in this section is Darksteel Juggernaut, who I keep trying not to call Big Jugs. This is 5 generic mana for a star artifact creature Juggernaut with Indestructible and a power and toughness each equal to the number of artifacts we control that has to attack each combat of Fable. So it doesn't have trample unless we can get out our Garruk's Uprising. Not hard to do with all the cards we're drawing, but even if not, this is just saying either do a bunch of damage to an opponent each turn, or an opponent loses a creature of their choice each turn because they're not going to be able to survive blocking this Indestructible Juggernaut. Just a lot of fun for our deck. That covers our synergy counts section. We have one more synergy section, which is about the uses we have for the things that we're making, particularly for our tokens, our clues especially. So all of our 3 waterbending cards here, Waterbender Ascension, Restoration, and Spirit Water Revival, all let us waterbend, which, as I described, lets us pay mana or tap creatures or artifacts in order to pay their waterbending costs. Inspiring Statuary gives us the ability to improvise with all of our artifact tokens for any of our non-artifact spells. Kappa Cannoneer lets us do that for just paying for the Cannoneer. Radiant Lotus lets us sacrifice our artifacts, particularly our clues and such, to treat them like Black Lotuses once per turn. And Shimmer Dragon lets us tap 2 of our untapped artifacts to draw a card. Good ways to use our artifacts either destructively or not for other things beyond just what they are printed to do. Yeah, so that is our synergy uses section. Let's talk now about our other tokens that we have, which are not the tokens we've already seen. We've actually seen all of these things. This section, I use the tag tokens just to represent creature tokens, because usually in most other decks, the other tokens have other uses, like treasures are there to ramp you, clues are there to draw cards for you. In this deck, we're doing lots of things with our tokens, so this section that I've just tagged as tokens really just means creature tokens. So as we've seen, Idol of Oblivion can make this 10/10 Eldrazi if we want to give up making a card draw every turn. Stride-Hitting Automaton gives us Thopters. Ethereal Investigator gives us those Flying Spirits. Mechanized Production gives us a copy of any artifact that we've enchanted it with. Mechan Assembler, once per turn, can give us a 2/2 robot. And Season of Weaving can make a token copy of an artifact or a creature we control if we choose, once or twice when we cast it, the 2-paw print mode. And that's our tokens section. Let's talk now about how we pump up our creatures. Not that many ways, but a few in this section. We've seen all of these already. Valgavoth's Onslaught, I considered not putting it in this section, but it does put counters on the cards that were manifesting dread with it, so it is pumping them up a little bit. It's worth remembering that making their power and toughness bigger is part of its cost, so yeah. Mutagen Man makes mutagen tokens if we pay into the X of its casting cost, which can put counters on our creatures. Lily Splash Mentor, when it flickers one of our creatures, that creature comes back with a 1/1 counter on it, and Curator Beastie gives all of our colorless creatures 2 extra counters when they enter. Seems good. And that is our pump section. Let's go now to our evasion section. These are ways to get in past our opponent. We've seen all of these as well. Waterbender Ascension, we can waterbend forward to make one of our creatures unblockable. Champion of Lambholt, if our opponent's blockers have power less than the Champion of Lambholt's power, then they just can't block any of our creatures. Garruk's Uprising gives our whole board trample, and Long River Lurker enters and makes one of our creatures unblockable until end of turn, and then flickers it at end of turn. So if we can flicker this or rebuy it or something, we can get that trigger multiple times. Pretty good. That is our evasion section. We have a little bit of protection. Just kidding, we've got a lot of it, because we have ways to protect our creatures by bouncing them or by flickering them. These are all of the bounce or flicker effects that we can use at instant speed, plus a couple of other things. So Dour Port Mage, we can pay 2 and a blue and tap it. to return one of our creatures to its owner's hand. We can run away together on one of our creatures in addition to another player's creature in order to bounce it. Waterbender's Restoration lets us flicker any number of creatures that we are willing to pay for. Ghostly Flicker also lets us flicker 2 artifacts, creatures, or lands. Long River Lurker gives all of our frogs Ward 1. We've got some frogs, it's fine. How many frogs do we have, you're asking? Well, we've got 5. It lists 4 here, but we have that Chomping Changeling, so yeah, frogs. Temur Sabertooth can become indestructible itself, but it's in this protection section because it allows us, again, to bounce one of our creatures to its owner's hand for 1 and a green, rather than 1 and a blue and tap like the Port Mage does. So that means we could do this for multiple creatures if we've got enough mana for it. Just continue to activate it over and over, and then make the Sabertooth indestructible several different times. Deadeye Navigator also lets us flicker our creatures by pairing with them with the Soulbond ability and then paying 1 and a blue to flicker it. And Hullbreaker Horror lets us protect ourselves by returning a spell we don't control to its owner's hand, but also by letting us bounce our non-land permanents. The one card we haven't seen in this section is Swiftfoot Boots. If you haven't seen the Swifties, they're pretty simple and pretty cool. 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature Hexproof and Haste. Haste might be relevant sometimes, but Hexproof protects Lonis, protects the Hullbreaker Horror, whatever we need. Very cheap. Once this is in play, all we need to spend is 1 extra mana, and now, Hexproof. Or if we have Mutagen Man in play, it can equip for free. Neat. I guess I should mention that. Swiftfoot Boots is an equipment. That makes it an artifact, which means we can pay a waterbending cost, for example, or an improvised cost by tapping the Swiftfoot Boots. Nothing in its rules text cares about whether or not it's tapped, the same way that nothing in the rules text of a clue token cares about whether it's tapped. So this is another free card free artifact, I should say, that we're able to tap as an artifact for improvised purposes or for waterbending purposes, or to count to our artifact count for things like Darksteel Juggernaut. Yeah, neat. That is our protection section. We have one last section of spells, and it's just this little recursion section. We've got a Timeless Witness and an Under the Skin. Under the Skin brings a permanent card from our graveyard back to our hand, in addition to Manifesting Dread. And Timeless Witness is 2 and double green for a 2/1 human shaman that when it enters, we return a card from our graveyard to our hand. Doesn't even have to be a permanent card, whichever card we want. We can get back Ghostly Flicker or anything like that. It also has Eternalize for 5 and double green. That means we can pay 5 and double green while it's in our graveyard and exile it from our graveyard in order to make a token copy of it that is a 4/4 black zombie human shaman with no mana cost, only at sorcery speed. When we do that, that token will enter, and we get to return a card from our graveyard again. And it's a 4/4. So I put this in the recursion section because not only does it recur one of our cards, it recurs itself. But this recursion effect of Eternalize kind of plays like Rebuy in the cards in our Rebuy section, because we can play this out, let it die, and then Eternalize it, and we've gotten its triggers again, both from entering and from any of our other Creaturefall effects like Lonis. Pretty sweet. Love the Timeless Witness. And that covers all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basic lands. We're running 20 basics, which is a lot more basic lands than I thought we were going to run in this deck. Obviously, we're playing John Avon and Donato Giancola Modern Horizons 2 basics. Both beautiful lands. We are a little bit more blue than we are green. I think it would be fine to do 10 and 10 if you wanted to do that, but the proportions suggested that we actually go fewer forests and more islands, but I like to try, especially in a 2-color deck, of keeping the proportions a little bit closer to even, because you just don't know what cards you're going to draw in a 100-card deck. So if we have good proportions and then we sort of skew it a little bit more toward being even, it usually tends to work out in my experience, but obviously you do you. The reason I would think that you might want to do 10 and 10 is because we have several green cards like our Silverback Elder that have multiple green pips, and you want to be able to cast those on curve if you're able to get enough lands to cast them on curve anyway. So you want to not be limited by your mana. However, we have plenty of dual lands, so it's not likely to be that big of an issue, just a concern, or a consideration, I should say. So we're running a bicycle land. This is Rainslicked Copse. We get a tap land that is a forest and an island, so it taps for green or blue. Great. It also means we can find this with Farseek, because it's an island, so this is usually the target I choose whenever I Farseek, since it finds this land that will come in tapped anyway, which Farseek brings the land into play tapped. So we might as well get this one, since it's going to come into play tapped anyway. And then when it untaps, we've got green and blue mana available to us. We can also cycle it for 2 generic mana, which is why this is called a bicycle land. For 2, and discard it from our hand, we can draw a card. Something we might do later on in the game if we have plenty of mana and we just don't need any more, we'd rather have a card, or if we have this on our hand and we're just desperate for card draw, not usually a concern in this deck, but if we have it, it's good to have an option. If you wanted to upgrade this, I like the cycling effect, but if you just want something that's a typed duel that doesn't come in tapped, I would say Breeding Pool is probably your best option. It's a shockland. So yeah, there's an option there. Hinterland Harbor is next. This is a land that comes in tapped unless we control a forest or an island, and it taps for green or blue. It does not say a basic forest or island, which means 20 of these lands we have in our deck are going to make this come in untapped, as will our Rain-Slicked Copse and our Sodden Verdure, which you'll see later as a Tango land. So 22 of the cards in this deck, basically 2/9 of the deck, are conspiring to keep Hinterland Harbor a 36-cent card coming in as an untapped duel. Pretty great. In all likelihood, it's going to come in untapped. Normally, I would suggest an upgrade to a slow land, but you'll see why I'm not in a moment. We're running both of the filter lands in our colors. Overflowing Basin first. This is a land that comes in untapped and does not tap for mana unless you pay a mana into it. But when you do, it makes 2 mana, a green and a blue. So we have to tap 2 mana sources, whatever we're paying into this, and the basin itself, to make this 2 mana, but it's both of our colors, so it fixes our colors perfectly. Similarly, Flooded Grove is an untapped land, but it does tap for colorless mana on its own. And if we want to pay a green or a blue into it and tap it, it'll make 2 green, 2 blue, or 1 of each. So a lot more flexibility with the Flooded Grove than with our basin. However, if we don't have colored mana to pay into it, like if our only mana is colorless somehow, well then we can't tap Flooded Grove for colored mana at all. We can only tap it for colorless mana, as opposed to the basin, which any kind of mana can be paid into it and make it into colored mana. So filters very well, filters in different ways, and can tap for mana without having to be paid into it. Both are worth running, so we're running both. Next up, here are our fixing lands. We're running Command Tower, obviously. It's got the same text as Arcane Signet, taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, comes in untapped, is a untapped duel in this deck, makes blue or green. Yeah, we want this. Path of Ancestry is a tap land that has the same text as Command Tower, so it also makes blue and green, but it comes in tapped. That's okay, because whenever we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry one. So obviously, Lonis shares types with itself. Lonis is a Snake Elf Scout. So do we have any other cards that are those things? Yes, we do. We've got 1 snake, which is Lonis. We have 3 elves, one of which is Lonis, so that's 2 more creatures. And we have 3 scouts. One of those scouts is also an elf, but the other one is a frog. So that's a total of 3 other creatures, I guess, that beyond Lonis. So helps a little bit, not a whole lot, but sure can help with Lonis, and it's totally fine to have a tapped duel in a deck like this. Next we have Blighted Woodland. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and a green, tap it and sack it to Explosive Vegetation. Search for 2 basics, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So normally in my decks I like to run Myriad Landscape, which is a similar effect, but both of the lands have to be the same type, but it only costs 2 in tap and sack to go find them. However, it also itself comes in tapped. So I wanted this to be a little bit stronger in our deck, and since we're running green, we have the ability to pay into this. So yeah, Blighted Woodland I think fits well. If you want more acceleration in your land base, because notice, this does require you to pay mana into it and sack it, but it does turn 1 land drop into 2 mana. So it is acceleration in your land base. If you want a little more of that, Myriad Landscape's not a terrible option. Last is Temple of the False God. Not everyone likes this card, but I think it's perfect for the kinds of decks that I build. This is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. This is called a Soul Land. It just can't be activated at all unless we control at least 4 other lands, so 5 including itself. So even though this is not ideal if your opening hand is like Demolition Field and Temple of the False God and no other lands, you probably want to mulligan that. It is great to be able to play this on turn 5 and immediately jump from 4 mana to 6, be able to do a lot more with that. Or if you're accelerating beforehand, you might be able to get it out earlier than that and have it tap for mana. So it's a great acceleration piece, just not early in the game, which is when acceleration is probably most beneficial. So yeah, it works out to just be fine. Nothing wrong with this card. Next, we are running Yavimaya Coast. This is a pain land. It taps for colorless, comes in untapped. We can also tap it for green or blue if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. And we always should be. The reason for that is because if you think of it this way, if you don't need to tap this for colored mana, well then just don't. Just tap it for colorless. But if you do need to tap it for colorless or for colored mana, then that means the difference, tapping it for colored mana is the difference between casting a spell or not. If you had to pay 1 life in order to be able to cast 1 more spell on your turn than you otherwise would be able to, would you do that? I sure would. I've got 40 life in a commander deck, so I might as well pay 1 damage, or take 1 damage, in order to be able to cast a spell. And if I don't need to make that colored mana, like I said, I could just make the colorless mana. So even if this does 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage to you over the course of a game, that's not likely to happen because you've got plenty of good dual lands and plenty of lands in this deck. But if you do have to, it's worth it because each of those points of damage meant another spell you wouldn't have otherwise gotten to play. Yeah, totally worth it. Next is, can you upgrade this? Not really. I call it a side grade if you want to go into Bark Channel Pathway. The pathways are modal double-faced cards, so you can play it as an untapped green source on the front or an untapped blue source on the back, and you can't really flip it later if you didn't have a way to bounce it to your hand or get it back into play some other way. Really, only from your hand. I guess technically you could think of flipping it as if you played it on the back side and then, I don't know, somehow contrived a way to manifest it and then flicker it. I don't know. And anyway, yeah, I like the ability to be able to have a untapped dual land with Yavimaya Coast, and it's especially better because it's not several dollars like Bark Channel Pathway is. But that's why I call it a side grade, even though monetarily it's an upgrade. We're running Vineglimmer Snarl. This is a reveal land. It's a land that taps for green or blue, and as it enters, we can reveal a forest or island card from our hand, and if we don't, it comes in tapped. So it's sort of like another check land, but it doesn't check the lands you have in play, it checks the lands you have in your hand. But it does say forest or island, and again, we have 22 cards in our deck that are forests and or islands. So if we have one of those in our hand when we play the Vineglimmer Snarl, it's going to come in as an untapped duel, and that's great. Otherwise, it comes in as a tap tool, and that's also fine. If you want to upgrade this, I would suggest Willow Rush Verge. It's one of the Verge lands that's currently in Standard, and so they're not cheap, but they're great to have. So yeah, there you go. Temple of Mystery is a scry land. This is a tap land that taps for our colors and comes in and scries 1. So it's a guaranteed scry as opposed to the conditional but repeatable scry that Path of Ancestry gives us. Totally solid. Upgrading this would look like playing Hedge Maze instead. It's the Surveil land, which is, much like a scry land, typed dual. So you could fetch it with Farseek, and it ups your count of islands and forests in your deck. So yeah, totally fine, but also much more expensive. Dreamroot Cascade is our slow land for the deck, which slow lands, at least this one, has dropped in price. It's only 30 cents now, so I'm putting it on our deck again. Typically, I suggest slow lands like Dreamroot Cascade as an upgrade to bicycle lands, as an upgrade to check lands like our Hinterland Harbor, but it's just so cheap that we might as well run it as well. So this is a land that taps for our colors and enters tapped unless we control 2 or more other lands. It doesn't have to be any particular kind of land, just as long as we have lands in play. Dreamroot Cascade is going to come in tapped as our first or second land, but untapped as every other land after that. Love it. Thanks, Secrets of Strixhaven, for reprinting these into Standard. These are great. Next up, we have our Tango land. This is Sodden Verdure, which I've mentioned a couple of times. It is a forest island, just like our bicycle land, so it inherently taps for green or blue and can be fetched with Farseek. and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands, as opposed to the just 2 or more lands of Dreamroot Cascade. So not as likely to come in untapped, although we've got 20 basic lands in this deck. Still pretty likely to come in untapped, and it can be fetched, whereas Dreamroot Cascade cannot. So totally fine. Want to run both. Last section here is our utility section. We're running Alchemist Refuge because it's in our colors, and it's solid to be able to cast things on our opponent's turns. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay a green and a blue and tap it, and all the spells we cast this turn we can cast as though they had flash. So that's a nice little bit of utility. We can do some good stuff with it if we really want to. It's also true that we can activate Lonis's second ability, sack a bunch of clues, and steal something from an opponent, or hopefully steal something from an opponent, at instant speed anyway. So we already kind of have the ability to flash in something from an opponent's library, so we might as well have a little extra with the Alchemist Refuge. Archway of Innovation is next. This is a land that enters tapped unless we control an island. We've got plenty of islands in this deck. I think we've got 13, so that's a good 1/8 of our deck. This taps for blue, or we can pay a blue and tap it, and the next spell we cast this turn has Improvise. Not each spell we cast for the rest of this turn, just the next one, but still Improvise as a way to pay all the generic mana costs of our spell by tapping down our clue tokens sounds great. Like being able to improvise in our Hullbreaker Horror, because it's got a huge cost to it. We're only taking one of those generic costs and basically making it blue. I guess we're sort of paying 2 extra by tapping whatever blue source this is and the Archway itself, but we're getting to reduce it beyond that with all of our clues and whatever else we have artifact-wise. Seems good. Maybe our Swiftfoot Boots. We're running Demolition Field. I run Demolition Field in most of my decks because the kind of decks I build are for pods of a certain power level. And at those tables, typically, people don't look kindly on mana denial or on land destruction. And that's fair. That not everyone is looking for that in their Commander game. It's fair for Bracket 2 especially. But you have to have an answer to a problematic non-basic land because those exist in the game too. So if somebody has a Glacial Chasm and they're stopping you from doing damage to them, or if they have a Rogue's Passage and they're empowering themselves to attack unblockably with a huge Voltron commander, then those are instances of lands that are preventing you from doing what your deck does, or are empowering their deck to do something too strong or too strong for you to want them to do. So those are both an answer and a threat, both of which have answers of their own. It's totally fine to have one answer of that in your land base. Demolition Field is my answer. It is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or if we can pay 2, tap, and sack it, we can destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls. Wait. That player then gets to find a basic land from their deck and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So neither we nor they are down a land, but we've gotten rid of whatever problematic non-basic they had, and we've just put things back a little bit. And they can even tap their land that we gave them for mana right then if we want. Or if they want, rather. So yeah, totally fine. Next, we're running Kitchen. This is a card from the Ravnica Clue set. Yeah, it's just a cute land that works with our commander. It's a tap land that makes green or blue when we tap it, or we can pay for and tap it to investigate. Just an extra source of clues if we need one. It's a tap land in our colors. It's solid. It comes from the Clue edition, and we care about clues in this deck. And there is a new version of Lonis in the Clue edition, which is also in the considering section of this deck, by the way. Just a little too expensive for me to want to put in this deck. But yeah, just another tap land that if we need a mana sink, we can make an extra clue. Finally, I mentioned Rogue's Passage a minute ago. We're running it ourselves because we have plenty of creatures we would like to be unblockable, so we might as well use them. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or if we pay for and tap it, a creature can't be blocked this turn. That's great. Lets us get in with our creatures and close things out. It also lets us use this politically. We can say, hey, opponent A, I know you want to attack opponent B with your huge commander and maybe kill them, or at least just do a bunch of damage to them, but they've got good blocks. Why don't we use our Rogue's Passage and make your commander unblockable when you attack them so that you can maybe get them taken out or just taken down, and in exchange, you leave us alone for like 2 turn cycles, something like that. that opponent might say, wow, that sounds great. Yeah, go ahead and spend your mana so my attack is better. And we would say, no. You have to attack first before we activate this, because if we activate it before you attack, you could then declare that creature attacking us, and it's unblockable. And they would say, okay, that's fair. I will trust you, and I will move to combat and declare this attacker against opponent B. And we'll say, great, we are an honorable player because games tend to be more fun that way. We will tap a Rogue's Passage and activate it so that your commander can't be blocked. And now we have gotten some benefits out of that political deal, with them leaving us alone, hopefully for a couple of turns. And also, we've used their attack step and their creatures, or one creature at least, to do damage to opponent B, who is also our opponent. So that's all great. But then the other way to use this is to not make the deal at all. Just say, hey, I can see you're attacking. Before blocks are declared, I want your creature to get in. Maybe opponent B is attacking opponent C, and we're like, wow, opponent C will absolutely die if they can't block. We activate our Rogue's Passage and make it so they can't block that one creature that will kill them. When we do that, we're not getting any benefit other than the fact that one of our opponents is being eliminated by an attack phase by a combat phase that isn't ours. We're not having to commit any of our resources other than the 5 mana, 4 and tapping the passage itself, to activate Rogue's Passage. When you do that, it is always a funny moment at the table. No one expects one player to make a second player's creature unblockable when they're attacking a third player, just out of nowhere. Great fun. But even if you don't do that, or the political version of it, you can always make your own creature unblockable, and that's pretty great too. And that sums it up. Thanks again to Inking727 for requesting this commander, as well as for waiting for me to fit it into my weekly rotation. If you would like to request a commander deck and you're the patient sort, let me know in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider becoming a member of the channel, something I've been doing recently, and I'd like to see how it goes. But most of all, remember that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.